Conservation Commission meeting, September 27, 2023, and present are. Present.
We'll start with
President.
you. Say your
Your
name.
name.
Billy Cunningham.
Okay, thank you.
Evelyn Miller.
Hollis Adams, Select Board Representative.
Patty Gale, Planning Assistant.
Jean Walker
Susan Tucker.
Jane Raymond.
David Neiman.
and William will be voting today as an alternate.
Okay, great.
Okay, first on the agenda is map 10, lot 8/1, a subdivision review for approval, two-lot subdivision on Tenny Road. The owners are John and Judith Richardson, zone agricultural.
You all have big plans. Big plan.
Quick plan, yeah, let's do that, it's easier to see. Wait a minute, we don't want to jump out of the way. Sorry.
Slide it here, place the picture.
We have someone presenting.
Mike Dahlberg,
Just state your name for the record, please.
the land surveyor that prepared this
Thank
for the
you.
Richardsons. So as a refresher, we did the survey work for the subdivision. There's a very small wetlands crossing for the lot that we got the variance to subdivide. And I believe that Aubrey Carr was here from Keith Nordstrom Associates back in sometime in the spring, that this commission signed the wetland, the dredge and fill permit application. There's been a couple of changes to the plan since then. We've reduced the square footage by a couple hundred square feet by tightening up the side slopes and putting in a different culvert than was originally planned. So basically, we're just here to get your input on the subdivision, although I think you've already kind of looked at it once. But we're now going through the planning process, so we need your review and comment. Nothing has changed on the lot since April, just took 6 months or so to get through DES because there's shortage of help, and there's people on maternity leave and vacations, and you understand, it just took a long time to get it through the process. So here we are, and we have received our state subdivision approval, and again, we're going through the planning process now.
Do we have any questions or statements on this?
I forwarded you an email showing that he got his permits from the state.
State.
You have copies, hard copies here too. I passed out.
The plans that you have, the first sheet is just what the lot looks like without all the topo and the soils and the test pit data. The second sheet has the test pit data, the topo and the soils, and the third sheet is the driveway design that conforms to the town standards with the turnaround at the end. And it shows the dredge and fill area and culvert detail and everything else.
Do you have any questions?
So as part of technical review, the planning board would like comments from Conservation Commission, even if you have no issues of environmental concerns or whatnot, they'd still like to receive them.
So Mike, I think I saw somewhere in here, it's an embedded culvert, is that right?
Yes.
That's good. Embedded, under the,
Well, they set it down in to get flow.
So turtles can look there?
Yeah.
So instead of just laying the culvert at grade, we actually excavated it out the half the width of the culvert, so there's always that hydraulic connection. One for the hydrology and two for any critters that might migrate through.
Jane?
it may be addressed in here someplace, but is the increased flow that's going from whatever this one is, 10.8 over to 10.83, that's the way the water's flowing, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so is that Is there any increase in flow through that culvert?
No, the driveway in that area is very flat, and we've graded the easterly section of the driveway so it pitches off into, not a level spreader, but a swale that comes back into the ground, so it's not discharging into the wetlands and increasing any flow.
Okay.
And we are going to ask the planning board to allow us to do an individual stormwater management plan when the house is to be constructed. The Richardsons have 5 children and a whole slew of grandchildren, some on the way, some existing, so they're not sure what they're going to do with the lot yet. So we don't have a stormwater management plan because we don't know what we're going to build. But one of the requirements of the planning board that the town engineer Scott Lozana is asking for is one of those plans. So that will be done at some point.
Any other questions, concerns?
Pretty straightforward. I think the planning board will cover what they need to.
I was just gonna say, there was some
Yeah, the
planning
main
board
issue is
issues.
the crossing, and that was already addressed previously.
You wanna make a motion, David?
No.
Can we make some motion of comments to be forwarded to the planning board?
Sure. I move that this be accepted. We have no areas of concern, but they wanted to hear from us anyway, so that they,
We wanna
No
make sure all
errors.
the environmental issues are
Right.
addressed.
that, yeah,
Yes.
that they had addressed all of our concerns that we had brought up
All the
before.
environmental issues have been addressed?
Yeah. Sorry. Alice.
I'll second your motion, Evelyn.
That's what it is.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Good,
Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Appreciate your
Was this your
time.
quickest meeting ever?
It's one of the quickest meetings I've ever had. Fastest.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Oh, we're in a roll.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have map 5, lot 54 and 54-1, subdivision review for proposed 30-unit residential condominium development. The proposal is to build 5 townhouse-style buildings that will be located at Mass Road and Tatro Drive. The owner is Vermillion Investment LLC, zoned commercial industrial flex zone. The purpose is, its entrance has changed to off of Mass Road. Before it was in through by the Shell station? Correct.
That's correct.
Now it is right directly. Right, we have a presentation?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. My name is Doug McGuire. I'm with the DeBay Group. And this was presented to you about a year ago at this point. We had some obstacles that we had worked through. We were working through comments with engineering and with DPW and with planning. And obviously, as you mentioned, the big difference in this plan from the first one that you saw is that we have a primary access off of Mast Road versus through Tatro Drive. You know, there was a lot of positives in doing that. One, mainly, is that it's a lot less roadway infrastructure that had to have been built. There were a significant amount of upgrades that had to be done with the existing box culverts that were in place already coming through from Tatro Drive. And the real catalyst of the change was that abutters of the condominium association, of the commercial condominium at the top of Tatro Drive, expressed concerns about the residents driving through their parking lot, you know, essentially on a daily basis. And although it was our right to do so based on easements granted and whatnot, it was, you know, it was something that triggered us to to take another look. And, we did a traffic study to evaluate the viability of a connection on 111 114.
14.
And everything worked well, we have good sight distance. And so we changed our access point to that. The layout of the units is very similar to what you saw previously. The drainage design is similar. We are still proposing a infiltration pond towards the bottom of the property right here to handle the differentials in drainage.
I'm sorry, would you mind giving your presentation standing and just showing us on the map?
Sure.
Thanks a lot.
No problem. So, as I said, access here to Mast Road. As part of that, because we were crossing through the rail trail, we worked with the rail trail and Parks and Rec to adjust the rail trail so that it wasn't a mid-block crossing, and that was all worked through with them. We're going to be meeting their standards for that crossing and the adjustment of that. And so, as I said, everything's pretty much the same. Originally we had climbed up in grade, coming up to the back here, and then coming back down. And so all of that drainage is collected via a closed drainage system and directed to our infiltration pond here. This is a really good soil. I know there's some ledge on site, and that was, a concern expressed, and that's still there. But there are really good soils in this area as you come down closer. We did some test pits to verify that. Big separation to water table. And so I know one of your initial concerns was stormwater management, and obviously infiltration is one of the best ones that you can do because you're really getting no runoff, particularly in the more common storms, like for example the 2-year design storm. We have no runoff coming out of the pond at all. Everything is just infiltrated as part of the design. So I think I'll just touch on some of the items that you had brought up at your last meeting that would still apply to this, and kind of walk you through some of those items that you mentioned. You expressed concerns about stone walls. There is a small section of stone wall here that would be eliminated. We did negotiate that or notify the abutter that was happening, and they don't have an issue with that. So we do have a small section there that would be removed. The steep slopes that we have really are only in that back of the longer unit, and just get to the grading plan real quick, and if you're following along, that is sheet 7. And so this is something that we talked about with the planning board. Obviously it's an item that needs to be looked at, and we felt that we have looked at it and taken it into consideration. So in doing test pits, we know that we have some relatively shallow ledge here, and so there's going to be some blasting associated with this portion of the project. The blasting, we're showing that you're going to actually have some exposed ledge through this area, which is honestly a good thing, because from an erosion standpoint, you're not going to get erosion on exposed rock. So we did this conservatively. We showed basically a little over a 1-to-1 batter, so it's not like a vertical split face or anything that we're showing, but actually angled back through that area. We made sure that we had some positive pitch drainage-wise away from the back of the units, and that swales along to each side, and it's collected ultimately and routed through the site. So there is a relative balancing on the site because of some of the cuts here. We do have sections of fill here, so we will be kind of balancing that. It's not only an excavation on site where these are worked into the grade, and this is in a section of fill here. This is not a walkout. This is at grade, and so in the back here, this is kind of a plume of fill that you'd have there. So there's a mixture of cuts and fills on the site. The drainage piece that you had mentioned, we do have full easement access for the drainage pond that we have here, the little portion that is on the abutting property. That was negotiated, we have draft easement agreements, and the Langleys, the owners, were actually at the last planning board meeting, and basically stated their desire to work with the applicant and provide that easement. While I'm in this area, there is something that I should bring to your attention because it does directly affect you. You may or may not be aware, there is a easement that runs along the edge of this property line that provides you with walking access to an area of conservation land up above. We've called that area out, and what we've done is, just so that there's no issues at all, we've proposed to modify that easement a little bit so that obviously, we're not expecting someone to have a walking trail through the collection portion of the forebay on this. So we bumped that area around and have those easements, and the Langleys are also aware of that easement and intend to give the town of Goffstown that small relocation, which just kind of bends it around. The other thing that works nicely about this is that the access to our pond, and for maintenance purposes, we're required to have a 10-foot wide gravel access. I relocated that access to be right in the middle of the easement. So if you have a walking trail or anything, that portion is built essentially, and you'd be able to utilize that and then be able to continue your path and trail however you were going to do it beyond that. But there would be no restrictions or anything that would impede your access through that area, and if anything, I guess it would make it easier because it will be cleared and it will be a graveled, like a drive essentially for vehicles, but certainly adequate for walking purposes. Drainage, as I said, we definitely sized this appropriately to mitigate any runoff. And as I said, the good news is that in an area right now that a lot of this kind of came down, was dammed, so for lack of a better word, a little dam here of the rail trail, and pushed down to this where it directly crosses under Mast Road. Now we have an infiltration pond that's collecting that water and infiltrating it, and infiltrating a significant portion of it through several of these storm events. Snow storage we added to our site plan. I guess that just wasn't on initially, but it is on the site plan sheets, which was something you asked about.
Where is that located?
On sheet, I believe it's the one right before this. So sheet 6, we have sections of snow storage throughout the property. We also have notations about green snow pro and other requirements that we typically put on our plans. And maintenance agreements on the drainage, that was brought up at the planning board as well. And that will be included as part of the bylaws of the condominium association. So it will be part of a recorded document. And typically what we do is we have an operation and maintenance manual that's included within our drainage report, and that will be referenced in the bylaws and obviously essentially attached, so that will be solidified. So you guys had hoped that there could be some type of drainage maintenance agreement recorded. Well, it will be included within the bylaws, and of which are recorded. So hopefully that satisfied that concern. Dumpster locations, these all have garages, and so everyone is going to have individual trash bins. There's not going to be any on-site dumpsters, and so because it's an association, private, they will have private trash pickup by a private entity that would be paid for through their association dues. And so on a weekly basis, they'll put out their trash cans. Those will be picked up by a private company and then So no dumpsters will be on the property for that reason.
Can I ask a question? What if they want the dumpsters? Because typically all these condos have
Yep.
dumpsters.
Well, unfortunately, if they wanted dumpsters, that would have to probably be something that they would have to bring up to the staff, and if staff wasn't comfortable with that being an administrative change, they would have to go back to the board for that.
Because generally it is like Pennard, a waste management company that will come and pick up. There's not like an individual like truck like the town has that will come and do that.
Yeah.
So in this area, it is usually a dumpster form of trash pickup for private.
Well, I mean, I think, some people would prefer the convenience of having the individual trash pickup. I mean, I know there's companies that can do it. I don't know if why others choose not to. We just felt that with the garage bays that we have, and it's a double deep garage bay. So there's plenty of room within the unit to, still build, it's not like you're putting your your trash in there and all of a sudden you can't fit your car. It's very deep. So, that's the intention, and so I guess if that's a desire of the association, once they take over, that would have to be something that they would have to take up.
Okay.
You
Was
know,
there
so-
room, like if they wanted to have a location? I just can see what's gonna happen later on down the line. They're all gonna be saying, we want trash pickup.
Yeah, I mean, there's always room for something like that. If you wanted to cut it into the site, it might require some, a couple of small retaining walls or something to force it into a corner of the site. We didn't really factor it into the design, so it wouldn't be a easy, oh yeah, let's just slap it right there. No, I don't think.
They'd have to.
They'd have to plan for it, because I mean, typically we would put that at a point that's easy for the vehicle to be able to pull up. And you also don't want it, directly next to one of the units, because then, they're dealing with everybody else's trash. So the units are pretty spread out, and there isn't like any dedicated area necessarily for that. I mean, if we were gonna do it, we would probably put it like at one of these bends where you extend it out and put it in to the bend, which it could be done, but there's some grading in here that would have to get modified, and so, it's just not something that,
About the snow removal too.
what's that?
I think the bins you have your snow removals,
Right.
your snow storage areas, so that's not a place where you can stick a dumpster.
Well, yeah,
You're
good
gonna
point.
be using in
Right.
the winter for storage.
And they might just bring it themselves, I guess.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, so you said that you've already talked to the rail trail about
Yeah, I'd like to know about that.
relocating the rail trail instead of continuing it on.
Mhm.
So what is this black hash mark here?
Basically, it's a painted crosswalk, so essentially what we're doing is we're bringing the crossing, and it's more clear, I guess, on sheet 6 of the site plan of kind of what's happening here.
Uh-huh.
So the dotted area is the relocated portion of the trail.
Yeah,
And then what we have is a section of pavement which has the concrete truncated domes, the ADA panels that you have. Those are at the intersection, and then you have a painted crossing, and we have signage, and we have the 3-rail fence to direct them, and this was all something that, basically what this came from is that we have, this throat is at greater than 2%, and ADA requirements do not allow for more than a 2% cross slope to go in your path of travel. So you can go down at like 4%, or you could go even up to like an 8% grade of like a ramp, as long as there's stopping points and all that. But what you can't have is have the path of travel be more than 2%.
For cars,
So, what's that?
for cars,
No,
for,
someone in a wheelchair
Okay.
or what have you. So the issue is that where this trail is flat, getting access into here, you couldn't have a flat access through there. So the crossing would be more than the 2%. And so for that reason, it had to be brought to an area where it was flat. And honestly, from a safety standpoint, it was determined that it would be better to cross at an intersection than it would be at like a mid-block crossing where somebody's maybe not expecting someone to come out of the side of the trail if someone was turning in off of Mast Road or coming out to go to Mast Road. It's just, so I mean, yeah, that was, you know, as I said, we haven't been back to you guys for a year, and there was items like that that had to be worked through.
But you talked to the rail trail people?
Oh, yeah, yeah, we have their full sign off.
They've signed off on it?
But
Yeah.
it's not, the select board have to approve it, because it's really governed by the select board. It's the Friends of the Rail Trail is, you know, like an advisory board, but
Right.
any improvements occur through the select board.
Well, I just think there could have been some other solution than bringing it back up to Mast Road. Because then you're bicycling along the path of traffic. I mean, you're not in the traffic, but if you've talked to them, then, okay.
Well, I guess all I'd say is, I'm not dismissing the comment, it's just, I'm a little desensitized to it because it was a back and forth discussion for several different meetings,
Okay.
different pieces of it. And so, I mean, ultimately, between DPW, Parks and Rec, everybody had weighed in on this and determined that this was the best option. I was more on board personally, saying, just keep it as it is, who cares if it doesn't meet ADA? There's plenty of sections of the rail trail that don't meet ADA.
Right.
So I don't know why that was a big concern, but what the thought was is that everything that's being touched, everything that's being adjusted, they're trying to make sure is up to their best, latest standard. And so, I mean, this thing is gonna feel like a very, you know, the crossing that we have across Mast Road in town by the ball fields? I mean, you know how you can kind of like see that coming? It's because of the fencing, because of the concrete pads and the truncated domes, and, you know, so this is gonna feel very similar to that,
Well,
you know?
what's a topo though? Because where you're talking about, that's flat. That's
This is
very-
flat too, yeah.
That is, because right now, the trail is, the old railroad bed is setting up high from
From Mast Road.
Mast Road.
Right.
So it's quite a,
So what it is so this, in these misdirections here that we have, are bringing us down in grade at a gradual pace. So you're right, we are coming down off the trail,
Okay.
but, so this is coming down at like 4%, which is ADA compliant, and then when it gets to here, it's at the level of the road, and then you work your way back up.
and how close is it to the road then? You're traveling right along with the road.
Just at the intersection, at the crossing. You know, at where the road is intersecting with Mass Road, we have a painted crosswalk that you would see, you know, on any other
No, I guess
crossing.
what I'm saying is, so, right, I understand there's an intersection there, so then, whoa, are they gonna put a light up there then?
Or one of those blinky
Yeah.
lights?
I wouldn't think for
Well-
that area they would, it crosses Morgan Estates
Yeah.
right there, road too.
This was worked out with rail trails?
It crosses Dana's Park too.
Very extensively,
Planning
yes, it
board
was.
issues. A lot of these are planning board issues.
So this
I
is
know
not,
they are.
this really isn't our issue?
But an issue that is not a planning board issue is I'm not keen on these postage stamp snow storage areas. A little bit here, a little bit there.
Right, that's
Right.
more of our
That's not the
issue.
way plow contractors work. They want to drop the blade and run,
Right.
Well,
push stuff. So
I
I at
also-
least want to see a note on the plan that says if snow can be accommodated in the designated areas, it has to be hauled offsite.
I think
I
we
think
have
it says
that.
that.
Okay.
It says it somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a typical one. We
Just
know,
want to make
yeah.
sure, okay, fine, that's good
No,
enough.
that's
No,
more,
no,
it's a,
Virginia.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Jane.
that's this.
I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Yeah,
What are these little lollipop-looking things? What are they on page 6?
On page 6.
I'm gonna need you to be a little bit more specific.
Well, they're in front of the building.
Proposed townhouse building,
These here?
4 units.
They look like
Yes,
little-
yes.
So these are grassed island areas,
Oh,
and they just look a little funny because what you have is you have the driveway, and then there's a paved jut-in that gets you to your doorway, which is set off the garage door. So you have, if you can picture this, you have your garage door here, and then you have your man door to come in here. So this bumps in, it's just gonna look like a little walkway that comes off, and all this is grass in between.
Oh, okay.
And all between the, all right, so my issue, I understand there are 30-some units, 3 bedrooms apiece, there are gonna be children there. Do you have any kind of accommodation for a play area for children? You
So
know,
no, we don't have any playgrounds or anything. You know, the intent is this is not intended to be a community for children. I mean, obviously, can't legally prevent someone from having children and not buying a unit or something. But the intent is that what we're finding, and this is directly related to the marketing analysis that him and his realtors have discussed, is that you got more and more people that are working from home. They want the extra bedroom to use as an office. And it's just, the footprints aren't that much bigger. The extra room is not probably the size of what you would expect as a bedroom, but it's great for a small office. And it just provides that flexibility. So, I mean, that's why they're in there. We did talk about school children, and we had to account for that. One of the items that the planning board had us do was put in this walkway all the way down and through. We also have a park, well, not a park bench, but a bench, you know, on the end here, so that if there's some children who want to sit, they can sit, and we pulled that bench up so it's protected by the vertical granite curb. This area is going to be all vertical granite curb, so there is some protection there.
So we're saying that's gonna be a bus stop for kids.
Yeah,
It could
we'll have
be.
to-
If there's kids, then it'll be a bus stop.
I'm
Yep.
sorry, you're gonna
somewhere.
have
Yeah.
some kids someplace.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no
Okay.
way.
But that's not a
That issue was
conservation issue.
debated at
No.
length amongst the planning board as well.
Right.
And they already go along Mass Road. I'm at Timberwood, and they're right out front there. I mean, they already are going along Mass Road picking them up.
Yeah.
It's,
Okay.
So,
I have
But
another,
there's nowhere for kids to
Call
play
us
but
back to the, let's go to the snow removal,
Snow removal.
where Carlos had a concern.
well, he did point out the note, I just.
Okay.
didn't-
It's written in here.
Over there
It
somewhere.
goes.
If you want me to read the note for everybody?
It's-
Sure, why don't you?
Sheet
All right, so
6
the
out
note,
of 14.
the note that we have on the
Right
plan
here.
is, it says, in the event accumulations of winter snow volumes exceed on-site storage capacity, excess volumes of snow shall be removed from the site and disposed of at a legal dumping site.
Okay, that's what he, okay.
So who checks on that? So is there a
Code
town
enforcement officer.
that
Did-
is there?
for when they do it, I'm sure
Had you
even the
fin-
people within the development would
Had you
want the snow
finished all
removed
that you were
properly.
going to explain to us before questions were asked?
Well, almost, you know, obviously, I think we touched on the sidewalks, you had asked about sidewalks, we did add that sidewalk access down to the main road. You know, best management practices for erosion, we have all those in our plans and our details. And the last one is a SWIP that you guys were requesting copies of, and we have no issue with providing those if and when we get started.
Okay,
Oh.
so now, Susan?
The water coming off the roofs, is that all being directed then into your drainage system?
Yeah, it is. We have areas where some of the units have roof drains that were specifically collected into a closed drainage portion, but in areas that it wasn't necessary, we have a pitched roof up the middle here, and so we accommodated whichever way the drainage was going. Like, for example, I don't know if we necessarily put anything on the back of these units, but that water drains into a graded area that comes to a catch basin right here and then goes into the system. So everything's ultimately collected. It might go through the road or the green space, which might help with some absorption, which we don't take any credit for. So, I mean, you know, obviously, we're saying that the roof is just pouring down and going right to here and going in. If it recharges in here on its way over, then, you know, that's just a benefit we're not taking credit for, so.
Okay, Jane?
In your old plan, you were going out on Tetro Drive. Is it going to be accessible through, like blockaded, but potentially accessible through?
No, so we're not proposing, there is an existing access through Tetro that goes up to the cell tower. In our previous plan, we were going to like upgrade that and then extend, you know, with additional roadway to come in that way. We're not proposing to do that at this point. We feel that, you know, this whole access is designed to accommodate fire trucks. They can circle through the entire development. we didn't feel that with this length of only 150 feet of access before you have a looped connection, so, you know, if there was a blockage here, you could go around to get to another spot, so you have 2 points of access when you're inside the development. It didn't require a second point of access, and for the amount of upgrade and honestly, additional impervious area that had to be accommodated or treated or whatever, that was,
So
where
staff
is-
was recommending that you have a gated access to that easement area for a case something happens at the main access, so they
Right.
can access through the other location. Are you still gonna propose that? It was, I recommended it, fire recommended it, police recommended it.
yeah, well, and you know, I mean, that's a, I
They were
get it, it's a
comments.
nice recommendation, that's an extremely expensive recommendation.
Just a gated one, just in case, and I can say like where I live, a tree fell. We have a gated access on McGuigan, we had to use that to get out, and we're the same, not that far of an entrance, we couldn't get out unless we went through McGuigan.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that with the board. I followed up with Lieutenant Connor to confirm that it wasn't a safety issue requirement. I mean, hey, it's a nice to have, but to have to redo 2 box culverts and hundreds of thousands of dollars just to have that secondary access, that's just not viable.
Do you think that if there was a fire and it was blocked, they'd be able to get to like the back of the buildings from the street? Do you say that they would be able to somehow access still?
I mean, these buildings are all gonna be sprinklered.
They're gonna be sprinkled?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both, yeah,
They're
it's
required to be,
multifamily.
you know, we have a widened access, this is 28 feet wide of pavement, physical
Yeah.
pavement for the entrance. You know, I mean, I'll say, I mean, I don't know if I've had this conversation with, it's Captain Connor now, right? Captain Connor, but in other communities, I've been told that every single fire truck or apparatus carries a chainsaw on their vehicle. And, you know, so if there's a downed tree and there's an emergency, they come out, they saw cut it, and they push the thing out of the way. So, I mean, I don't see, and that would have to happen in this vicinity only for that to be an issue. And so for that short of a distance, you know.
And the parking lot goes right up to that road, basically, on the other side, the assessed, where the.
Over here?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Are they, is there?
I mean, the parking lot is like
Way over there?
Yeah, so I mean, trust me, if this could be accommodated, like, oh, hey, let's just do that, because that would be nice to have.
So it'd have to be like a.
Well, and not only that, but the box culverts, when we evaluated this, the box culverts, because they were put in not to accommodate a roadway, the culvert was put in a little bit higher maybe than it should have been, and it grades up like this. So it was like a 5% of which the fire truck would like bottom out on. So then both box culverts would have had to have been, which we were prepared to do if our access was coming in that way,
Yeah.
but not to do an emergency access just as a nice to have. You weren't going to bring in, that box culvert would have to get picked up, and when they pick up, they probably get destroyed because they're all set on footings and everything. So you're basically buying 2 new box culverts and building about this much more road. That's about how much it was, as
All
far
right,
as.
so you don't, it's not like it's abutting there to make it easier.
Oh, no,
anyway.
no,
Okay.
I mean, if it was, we
Well, that
absolutely
makes
would.
sense to me.
You know, I mean, it's just, it was a pretty significant improvement to come through that way.
Did you say there's a gravel access through that easement on the east side that attaches to the rail trail?
Through here, yes, there
Right.
is. It's
That's
shown.
10
it's-
feet wide?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. It's shown right here on the grading plan, called out 10-foot wide access. And so it comes right through, and I guess all I was saying is that if you guys were looking to do your trail at any point, you could just, you know, attach to that, you wouldn't have to build this section, and you just continue through, so.
Okay, Carlos?
A few things, Doug. Early on, you mentioned, well, it's a conservation area over here. I don't know what an area means. Is it privately held property with a conservation easement on it? Is it town-owned property that's?
I have a copy of the easement, I can check into it for you. I was hoping you guys were gonna know more than me.
It's
It's
town.
It's town.
They granted it to
It's-
town.
It was granted to the town.
They gave an access all the way up
When
to
Langley's,
Yucca Hill.
when Langley's built
Oh, they got
over there, they granted
the town?
a couple
Yeah.
of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's at the
Okay, so
very
it's
top.
an easement.
Yeah.
It's an
Well, you
easement
and I
and it-
walked it.
and-
Yeah.
And it has a
gets
right.
ledgy,
Very,
fur-
very
It gets
ledgy.
very, very ledgy as you move up, yeah.
Well, and essentially, I mean, the language within the easement is pretty explicit that it was only for a walking trail.
Right.
And so, you know, we felt that obviously if it was something like, oh, you had to make sure that you could drive a truck up there, we'd have to make sure we could accommodate that. But as far as a walking trail, this is probably, this will be the best portion of the walking trail because it's a flat section of the gravel
And
access
the rest is
for,
a big ledge
yeah.
Yeah, it's very steep.
Probably not
It's very
ideal
steep.
to,
Yeah.
Right.
for walking.
yeah.
I had two more.
Oh.
Yeah,
ahead.
go
Go ahead.
Go ahead, why don't you
I've got
finish,
kids.
Carlos?
So, yeah, rewind.
That piece of property was wetland
You
way
had-
back.
Mentioned, let's see, the one I want to talk about is a recreational. That's the most important one to me. Oh, you mentioned that secondary access, you seem to imply that it wasn't viable because of cost. You know that's going to fall on deaf ears.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess,
I'm just saying, I'm just saying, that. But that.
well,
that
I don't think it should, to be honest, because, I mean, if it's
Well,
not
your argument is
required.
we can't do it because it's too expensive.
Well, but, so
For safety
I'm not saying we need an access, but it's real expensive, so we don't want to do it. We don't need an access, it
Okay,
is not
that's different.
required,
That's different.
so that's the
And the fire
stance.
department's on, I think I heard you say, the fire department finally has signed on to that.
Yeah, and I don't know, I mean, obviously, if staff, Patty or Joanne called up Captain Connor and said, hey, would you like to have a second access? And he goes, yeah, sure, I'd like that. Then that's how it got written into the report. Well, when I called him and I said, is that required? And he's like, oh, no, that's not required at all. And I'm like, okay, well, so we don't need it then. And no, we don't need it. So, I mean, I guess that's when cost does factor in, you know, respectfully. I mean, it has to factor in if it's not needed and it would just be nice, then you have to kind of factor in. I think if it wasn't a cost issue and that we, like Patty said, if the parking lot was right here and we're just saying, oh, no, we don't want to buy a gate, or, you know, that's not appropriate. But this is as I just tried to walk through, it's a significant improvement that would have to be
I'll
done.
meet you halfway and say cost is a consideration.
Fair.
Because you're saying the grade and everything, it's not like like you can just gravel a little.
Susan? Oh,
The last point, to me, is the most important one, has to deal with recreation. I think it's important to provide recreational opportunities for these people, because they're gonna find them somehow, by
yeah.
hook or by crook, and we've seen this all the time. They don't have any room, so they end up going here, they end up going there, they may push them out into wetlands or other resources of concern to us, if there's nothing provided for them. So that, I think, to me, is the singular most important issue, is where are these people gonna recreate, other than get out and walk on the rail trail? That's one kind of recreation, but I think, and like I said, we've seen this before on, what I wanna call them, like homeowners associations, where they get out into the easement areas and they start putting in swimming pools and
Oh, yeah.
trails and decks and all kinds of other stuff that may or may not impact important natural resources, because we're all about more than just wetlands, it's all about the natural resources which we've identified in our natural resource inventory.
So, I mean, you hit on this. I mean, I just don't think it can be discounted. Our thought is, you have a development which is directly on the rail trail. So from a recreation standpoint, all of these owners have direct, right out their front door, access to the rail trail, which they can go to recreate at parks, at downtown, at anywhere they want to go. There's a significant amount of recreation, nothing that we could duplicate on this site that would even remotely compare to what they have access to. So it's not a complete oversight, it was a acknowledgement of, this is a very unique site that has a direct front door access to the rail trail in both directions that they can utilize. And, you know, and not every unit owner is looking for, you know, something specific on their property that they have to maintain, you know, a playground or whatever. But I mean, if somebody had kids here, they can hop right on the rail trail with their kids, bikes or walking or what have you, and they can go right downtown to where there is, you know, some of those accommodations that are probably better than anything that would be offered here.
Susan?
So-
Once upon a time in the world, a kid could just walk outside the door and play.
Exactly.
Not have to get on a rail trail to go downtown, away from the, I mean,
Yeah.
wow, what we've come to.
Well,
Well,
I
I
mean-
guess
I
they
mean,
can
at the
climb
same
the rock
time-
wall behind the townhouse.
We have to know, I mean, obviously, this is why you don't, like, you don't buy this unit with your family of 4 and say, well, what, we don't have a big backyard to play and we can't put our swimming pool in. And so, I mean, again, I don't think it's respectfully, I don't think it's what's this world come to? I think this is just a different type of accommodation. I mean, this is for a young professional, start-out family, that is not looking for maintenance, not looking to maintain. They don't want a garden, they don't want to mow their lawn, they don't want to plow their snow. If they want to do something physical, they would probably, a lot of those people would love the access to the rail trail. And that's probably a big selling point, potentially, for this, is that they can do that. But I just don't see of anything that we would add of any value to this property that would compete with the benefits that the rail trail offers.
I do
Well,
want to
yeah,
say though,
especially
that
'cause you
this is a
can't, it's
condominium, it's
so
not an
tight.
open space subdivision where they own their own lot, where they're gonna put a pool in and do those
So,
things.
Yeah, they
This is
can't do
like
anything.
Morgan Estates to
so I
me.
guess a direct question, do they pay a recreational impact fee, I assume with this development?
If there is one,
Well, that would
I'm not
speak-
aware of
That would
that.
speak to providing some recreational opportunities in town.
No, yeah, I mean, all the impact fees that this is
Yeah,
assessed.
this will be very useful for a multifamily.
Oh, there it is, okay.
Susan?
Yeah. I have a question about, the drainage issues are on the Langley's land, and you have a easement with the Langleys, and, because I'm looking at the property line. I'm just
Yep,
concerned
no,
that
you-
if it fails, who's responsible for it then? I mean,
Well, I
this is
don't
on
look
the
at them as
Langley's land.
issues, I look at them as improvements. It's a best management practice, it's a constructed pond, of which the association is responsible for the maintenance of the pond, and the fact that it's on the Langleys does not relieve them of that responsibility. In fact, it's explicitly in the easement requirements that they maintain it. So the Langleys are just saying to them, and the real reason why we did this is because the outfall point of all this drainage ultimately is off property right here. So to have the outlet system be able to be constructed in that area made the most sense, rather than try to pipe it and, regrade that area. And the Langleys understood that, this wasn't an area that they had any intention of developing. They have other areas, like on the other side, closer to Tatro Drive, that, that they may be looking at developing, but this was not one of them. And so, that was an agreement that they came up with, and there's no issues on their end with that, so.
Okay, do we have
Okay.
any other
As long as they're happy.
concerns or
So
questions?
these are little ponds or detention areas right by the rail to trail. These right here are also.
Do we have a concern to Evelyn? You're all set with that? Okay, anybody else?
Oh, well, wait a second. So if those are the little, I'm looking at the rail to trail again, and the piece that goes right along the road. And we've got 2 swales there that are supposed to be detention ponds, kind of. Where did you say that the area is going to be, that the children are going to wait for the bus stop?
Oh, it's
over
right
here.
You can see it.
It's on the other
I'm
side.
sorry. It's a little
Yeah,
bit.
so
You can
those,
see.
those areas primarily are for collection and distribution of that water that comes down through that area already and gets directed to 2 cross culverts that go under Mast Road. So those are just really kind of conveyance practices. We're not using them to like store water. It's really just as like it's more of a collection bowl so that the water gets to it and can get to the culverts.
So I'm sorry to ask, where is the area that the children are supposed to be? My problem is that I see a bus stop out my window and I see these kids. The parents are there waiting, but the kids are just all over the place, so.
Yeah, I mean, and that was something, it was something that they were concerned about as well at the board level. So it's really just accommodating that area. This whole area of the rail trail is a pretty large, I mean, you have essentially at least 10 feet of pavement at the bottom of the road that's off the road, that is part of the access point for the rail trail. And then you have the whole area of the sidewalk, which is a full 5-foot sidewalk with a vertical granite curb. And then we put a bench there so that if the kids are just sitting there at the bottom of the road waiting for the bus, they can sit down and wait for the bus. So, I mean, we certainly don't expect to have 15 kids running around and playing football here or something at the bottom of Mass Road. That's really not the intent, and that is something that
That's what they
would
do.
obviously not be feasible to happen here, you know, so it's like, if there's gonna be any kids, we don't expect to see a lot of kids. I mean, you might see 1 or 2, 3, you know, that's probably where, that's what we see this potentially, but even if there were more, you know, this area is kind of intended for them to be able to just be off the road, off the driveway. I mean, this is a very low volume driveway, being that it's just serving this development, you know. We only have 30 townhouses in there, so.
Right, and it's for young professionals just starting out with 3 bedrooms, and they'll never have kids, so that's
I
pretty
think what you're
straightforward.
gonna see is the school buses will stay in the travel lane,
Yeah.
on the road, come to a stop, put out their signs and flashers, and wait for the kids to come onto the bus. They're not gonna be pulling off the road,
No,
Right.
and pulling back onto the road.
Right.
That's not acceptable.
The other thing we noted on that point, is that you reminded me, is that it was determined that the bus route is in this direction only, so that's at pickup and drop off.
Pick up and
So they won't be physically crossing Mass Road. They're gonna be, you know, with all the flashes and everything, they're gonna be stopped in the road, open the door right to the sidewalk,
Yeah.
and up they go. So, I mean, I didn't know that at first, and that made me feel better knowing that there'd be no crossing required.
Yeah, so, okay, David, you have something else?
No.
No, okay. Well, are we all set?
So we need to make comment to the planning board.
Make comment to the planning board. So do we have, Jane, you have a comment?
I have a comment for the planning board, and maybe it's in the condominium drainage swale maintenance, but I want to say it anyway, that the cleaning and maintenance, especially with regard to invasive species, has got to be adhered to. That they can't let the drainage swales and all these things grow up with the invasive species that we've seen in other places around
Okay,
town.
assume there's gonna be a stormwater management plan, I'll talk about inspection, maintenance.
I was gonna say it has to
There is,
say.
and it does talk about regular maintenance of, you know, because you don't want saplings to start growing
Right.
and that type of thing.
So, when you say regular maintenance, are you saying once a year, twice a year?
I think we
They
have,
probably
I think
to
we
be
have
mowed.
inspections even more often than
Okay.
that, you know, to just check for erosion and that type of thing. And then there's semi-annual, like, physical maintenance that, you know, mowings and
Yeah.
in the spring and falls, you know,
Well,
session.
Loose stripes, and that grows right in as soon as it gets a chance.
But
yeah,
there again, who in town, do we have somebody that, because I know we had problems with swales in other subdivisions.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
that was my comment to the planning board, and
Okay, do we have-
I think it's probably already in his
Probably somewhere.
condominium.
Who does
But-
it say who goes around? Is there a
Nobody.
town? Well, I mean,
The town will inspect their
They do inspect
systems.
their
If
own.
there's an issue and they get called to look at it, because they have that right to, they will, but it's a private system.
This one is visible, so I mean, obviously, somebody walking down the rail trail sees that there's water just pouring over a berm that there shouldn't be or something.
Yeah, if
They
they
could-
see, like, for instance,
The one
they
in
went
front
and
of
looked at
Rite
the
Aid.
one that you had talked about, and
Right.
then they called them up, said you have to do your maintenance, and they went and did it. But
There's
they're,
another one that needs maintenance.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Any other
town, with an
comments?
association like this, there is action that the code enforcement officer can take, legal action with fines and everything else, that if there's something that's brought to his attention, that, you know, it has to be addressed by the association, or there's, you know, more serious things that can happen, including even revocation of the site plan. Not that I think that would be a very extreme case, but.
a lot of these end up having a management company in charge of their
I was just gonna say,
association.
can't they call somebody in to take care of it and then charge the
And
association?
then they do all that stuff too.
Okay.
So,
I don't know if this is here, but I
So
know.
my biggest
like, we
comment I
have-
want to see go forward is there
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be enough consideration for recreational opportunities on the property. You know, expecting people to get on the rail trail, that's your recreation, is like saying you get in your car and drive down the Y. That doesn't cut it. So that's my biggest concern.
Okay,
So you want, so I'm adding about the invasive species should be included in the maintenance.
I think the dumpster should be a
We're
consideration
adding
too.
recreational opportunities are a concern.
um,
So,
I think the dumpsters. I
And
think
you
they
feel
really-
there should be a dumpster?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
um,
Yeah, maybe
makes it-
two
it's
for
good.
that.
I think
those larger-
from
Should have-
conservation standpoint, I think the other piece we should put in our comment to the planning board is that the runoff from the roofs and all of the on-site runoff really needs to be looked at very carefully. I'm sure it has been, but if you want to comment to the planning board,
It's a lot of impervious area.
there's a lot of impervious
Extreme
area.
amount of
and-
impervious area.
And so that would be my comment to the planning board, that
No, and runoff from site needs to be
looked at carefully.
looked at carefully.
yep. Anything else to add to that? Okay.
So these people here,
Do you want a motion, Jean?
Yes,
I'll make a
With all-
motion that the, what do we have, Patty, 4?
So you want to make sure that the clearing in regards to the invasive species is adhered to in the maintenance plan of the drainage
in the
systems.
drainage swales.
I'll word it better. There should be increase of recreation, there should be recreational opportunity, recreational opportunities are a concern. Should have dumpster locations, and the runoff from the roofs and on-site should be reviewed carefully due to there's a lot of impervious surface.
That, I make that motion.
Okay.
I'll word it better.
Get a second on that?
I'll second that.
Susan? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Thank you for coming in. She wants these, yeah.
Are these from the planning?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
these are, tomorrow, I'll take them
She'll
after.
collect them afterwards.
After, I'll collect them.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the thing, I get to grab plans.
Okay.
It's nice to have the big ones, so I
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
bring them down.
Oh,
So
yeah.
corrections and acceptance of the minutes, of the minutes and the non-public minutes. Do we have any corrections?
Do we have non-public?
I
I
didn't,
didn't see none.
I think that was
I
a
don't-
typo on my part if we didn't have
Yeah, I don't
non-public.
think there was for
There was
that
no
one.
non-public, it was just regular minutes.
okay.
That
Probably
was from
cut
the
and paste from previous meetings. though.
Yeah,
So of
that was
the,
a miss.
correction and acceptance of the minutes for July 26, 2023.
Oh, this
Any
is the
corrections?
agenda. Where's the?
I shouldn't see the minutes in the packet, but it's not a huge deal for me.
They were in there somewhere.
I didn't see the minutes either.
Did I not mail them to you?
I thought I read them somewhere. Or maybe I
If
read
it
them.
was too much.
Maybe I read them.
No, I don't think they were, because I was going through everything
Can
earlier
we-
today and I
can
don't
we,
remember.
Do you want to postpone and I'll mail them?
Postpone the minutes and
Okay.
we'll do them at the next.
We can, we'll postpone the minutes.
I don't see them.
Okay, let's go on to milfoil. We need to approve an amount of $45 over the already approved $6,000 to cover.
All right, do you want me to explain
Yes,
this?
please.
Yeah. So you all got a handout. So what happened was, they went ahead and, so I notified them that the budget got cut and we can only allocate $6,000 that was voted on the commission. I sent it to both Amy Smagula and I sent it to the association. And I said, you may want to adjust the grant because we can only contribute this amount. And this association doesn't have a lot of local costs beyond, I feel like it's just 2 people doing it. But they went ahead and did all the work. And they oversight on, I kind of feel like it was the state.
They both,
The state went ahead and had
Oh,
all the
state,
work
the state.
done.
oh,
It came in still lower, but they approved, it's in here, amount themselves up to a specific amount, the grant. I just lost it. I have it all, that's why I gave you the whole little, we've been emailing a couple days. So they approved them out up to 9,000. 495, so the state is gonna give that whole amount that they had already approved.
Just 45.
And she said with our 6,000, it should come in with just being over $45. So I'm bringing,
Do I recall it got cut through the budget process at the budget committee?
yeah, the select
Right.
board, the select board cut it, and then it went to the budget committee, and they cut it again.
Again. So,
So,
They're
and,
all-
but the
those are
good
people, all
news,
we
elected
have, we
officials,
do have the
so-
money, we just have to approve that. we
it's
can
only
spend it.
$45, so I
Right.
felt it was a
Right.
non-issue. And the Maskey Lake ended up refunding the money back for the 1,500 because the work didn't, they're doing something next year, so they're not doing anything this year, so they're actually giving it the money back.
So I'll move that we approve the $45. It'll come out of our budget.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, abstaining? Okay, yeah, we're probably fortunate that we got all that work done anyways.
Right.
yeah, it was a lot, they did a
Yeah.
lot. So you
Yeah,
have
I
like a
know.
whole little thing
Yeah,
of what
a
the
whole
bills were
packet
for.
Yeah.
So I think we have to do there's a request for recommendations for the land acquisition of map 34, lot 164A along the river near Mill Pond.
Oh, right.
And this is a recommendation to be forwarded to the select board.
It's the Rotary Park area, it's like a portion of it, it looks
Susan?
like.
I need to make a motion?
Yep, just say,
Yeah,
accept it.
We'll accept that.
Want
I'll
a second?
it.
Evelyn?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. I'm not, let's see, the others are copies?
yeah.
So
The
the-
3680 has been in here, it's just an ongoing, eventually you'll see them because they have to get, it's either a variance or they're gonna have to get a waiver.
I was gonna
from
say, these are
planning.
gonna be coming to us
That one will be
anyways.
definitely, and even,
Which one is that?
All, I think all,
the 30, map 36, lot 80 will have to come before you because it's in, I don't know if it's in the inner or outer, but it appears to be in the inner, so they would
Inner
need to go to ZBA.
yeah, in the
Okay.
inner 50.
The other one, the second one, the map 2417, that one's not within the 100-foot buffer, but it's in the 250 shoreline.
Oh, yes.
So will that one
okay.
come to us too?
No,
No, I didn't, okay. And then the next one is the TAM extension?
yeah, that one's gone.
That's going to ZBA?
That one would come back to us.
Come back to us, okay.
Okay.
Okay, that's all
So,
of those.
Then,
And so, we have non-public, David?
no, this one here is map 10, lot 8-1. No, that's,
That's the stuff I passed out to do with your first presentation. I
Okay.
emailed everyone,
yep, okay.
and so I make hard copies.
Yeah, And the
Okay,
rest
just
of
wanna
them
make sure
are
you saw it.
that we just went through are gonna come back to us.
Okay, yep.
David, you wanna go into non-public?
Well, I don't know that we need to go into a non-public. Has anything happened? Yeah, but it's not the big significant thing. We're investigating funding for potential projects, so I don't know unless people want to go into non-public to get a briefing. I'm not requesting it, but if anybody else wants it, then,
Or do you want, we can do it next month?
well, I'm just saying, if anybody else in
Does
the
any-
room
does
wants it,
anybody-
I'm not.
I'll trust David's good judgment.
What I
If he doesn't
want.
think there's a need for a non-public, then I'm
Okay,
comfortable
I
with
just
that.
want to give him the opportunity.
Yeah, no, I
Thanks.
appreciate it. But, I mean, other conservation issues.
Sometimes I forget to mention it, David, so I want to make sure.
Yeah, so, for
Got-
example, it was also in our correspondence, there was a sample of a,
So that
Oh, they-
looks like,
No, wait,
It was
Ziki's
a
still
sample.
talking.
oh,
Wait, what, David?
there was a document put in our packet, it was a sample of a monitoring form.
oh,
From you
Hollis.
Okay, I was just wondering where that had come from. On this matter, I just want to say that, you know, we keep saying we need to take up this issue of stewardship. We keep saying it, but we don't do anything. And, you know, I'm sure nobody now wants to dive into this tonight and have a big, long session at the end of this meeting. But we miss opportunities. So like last month, there was nothing for the agenda, so we just canceled the meeting. We should have had a meeting and spent it on the topic that we keep kicking the can down the road. So I just wanna say that this happens again, if, you know, October, November, there's nothing on the agenda, instead of canceling the meeting, why don't we actually do what we need to be doing? and
Well, you
have a
do have
discussion?
something on the next meeting, but if there, you wanna just, I put that on the agenda, and you could do it after that presentation.
Is it just one?
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have to do it at some point, we keep
Yeah, I
talking
think
about doing it.
We had talked about starting with an inventory of all the easements. And
Yeah.
I think you said that exists already, David, right?
Yes, it
We
does.
Thought that had been.
We already
yeah.
know what those are.
Yeah.
So.
So if we have, that sounds like there's not much on the agenda for next
It comes,
month right now?
it's all
Yeah,
about
do it.
coming up with a plan to move forward and how we're gonna implement it and who's gonna participate
Yeah.
and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
that stuff.
And that's what we
So
need to
we'll
be
add that to the
discussing.
agenda next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
let's put it on
I
the
just-
agenda for the next meeting.
I just wanted to know if you could expound on the stewardship. Is there any stewardship that the Goffstown Commission does right now? Or is it-
Essentially, no, but should be
Eventually.
doing. It's a requirement of having, so there's a couple of different issues here. I mean, most of the projects, conservation projects that we do, we work with the land trust, like the PLC or the Forest Society. And for those cases, we're covered, because they do the stewardship. And, you know, they have complete committees set up, and we get a copy of the results of the stewardship. So the good news is, the majority of everything that we've done is covered, so that's the good news. Lands that we've acquired for the town, including what's on the mountain, South Mountain, North Uncanunic, around Pacho Marsh, and then this piece that we should be receiving soon from the Klebanoff subdivision, those we will need to do stewardship on. And not only do we need to have a list of everything, but, you know, to start out, we're gonna need more than this reporting form, we're gonna have to start with some baseline documentation, because the reporting form is to tell you whether anything has changed. If you don't have a baseline document, you've got nothing to compare that to. So there's gonna be some work we're gonna have to do for those properties the town owns. Then there's a whole another category of all the properties that were created by subdivisions by the planning board, where there's a subdivision open space, and for the majority of those subdivision open spaces have conservation easements granted to the town of Goffstown.
Majority don't.
Actually, quite a few of them do, and I've looked up the documents.
I know 3 of them that do, but I mean, you have a one, I think, I like Blackbriar is one, like Longbrook, you don't, Van Buren, you don't.
There's some we don't, but I have a lot of
I know they were
them that we do.
included in that list though, like what Jason had done, they were all written on there, but
I've
they
got
own,
I've got the actual
okay.
documents.
Cause they own their own open space, a lot of them.
They own the open space, but there's a conservation easement to the town.
Yeah,
Who's
it's
who's
not,
monitoring that open space?
but I know on Van Buren, I know on Mongolia, and Longbrook there is.
But if we develop a spreadsheet on all of it, there's, can be categories, who owns it, who's responsible for monitoring, what does it entail, where can we find the documents, is there a book and page number, you know, all this stuff can be documented and put in one place, so that we can go to it, including a baseline documentation, so that when we do go out and do the follow-up inspections, we can compare it up to the baseline documentation. So I think there's a lot of stuff that,
There's a lot that has to be
There's a
sorted
lot
out,
to it.
and how these documents are going to be stored and
There's a
where.
lot to it.
And this is the age-old question that we run into so many times is, okay, so they have to be stored in town hall. How do we access them? And do we have access to them? And that's been an issue in the past, will probably be an issue again in the future. We have to come up with a system that works.
Well, now I put everything in the planning board's files, I create map and lot. Once they come
so
in,
and is
so it's all
there
filed by map
an
and lot.
easement plan, is it available digitally? Or is it just in hard copy?
Yeah, so some member on a committee is assigned once a year to monitor a property. They have to be able to have easy access to the baseline document and previous reports so they can look at that before they go out and do the site walk, because otherwise, how do you know that something's changed if you don't know what was there before?
So
And-
PLC uses Dropbox and Google Drive, so they have the Gaia file, like GPS files with the baseline documents, and then the form you fill out to say, like, these are the updates from the monitoring that they did, so I'm sure there's hard copies somewhere, but we have hard copies and then a digital, file folder, series of folders available for it.
There's easy ways to do it, but what we'll probably run into is then people have security concerns about, well, we can't put town documents on, you know.
No, we can figure
Been down that path many times, so I expect that will become an issue.
So then, as we move forward, I would love to see us adopt an easement program where people, common citizens, might be willing to step forward and say, I would like to be an easement, I'd like to oversee this and inspect it. Because I think there's plenty of people out there who would love to do this stuff, who would love to feel as though they're taking ownership of it and helping out in a positive way. I mean, I've noticed that DPW is doing an adopt a catch basin. I mean, my God, if we can get people to adopt a catch basin to make sure that the leaves don't collect on top of the catch basin, we ought to be able to get people to adopt
Adopt a
easements.
catch basin. Oh my
It's
Well,
just true.
no,
To
it
that-
is true, yeah, I've seen it.
That's how I found you guys, is I looked up conservation volunteer, I found PLC first, and sure enough, it was easier to get to volunteer with PLC before getting on the commission, but, yeah, I mean, it'd be great if we had forms that people could fill out for us, that say, Goffstown Conservation Volunteer.
Well, I
'Cause
think
there's
it
people
could be
looking.
put
I
on the
was.
town website
Yeah.
if we got ourselves figured out.
Yeah, people say, that's pretty
Su-
cool, that's
We're
in
not
my
ready
backyard.
for it.
I'd love
Yeah.
to volunteer as an easement
Right.
inspector.
But I guess the main point I want to make has just been really emphasized really well by everyone, thank you, because it's, the point is there's a lot to discuss, and just sitting here, we're starting to go off on all these tangential aspects to this problem. It's big. So we need to devote
It's big.
a whole meeting or a better part of the meeting to addressing this.
You can have a special meeting too, if you wanna
Yeah,
have like a
sure, yeah.
workshop on it, you can do that too.
That's another good option, yeah.
Well,
But we
let's-
have to do something like that or it's never gonna happen, it's never gonna start.
Well, let's,
And we've
If
already
we-
thrown out a few ideas, as long as they're being captured in the minutes. I mean,
if we
It's not major.
have a special meeting, I think,
I think that,
and maybe, I hate to turn to you, David, but I'm gonna turn to you and say, maybe you should make a list for us of what you think.
Well, I think everybody should bring their ideas to the
Right,
meeting.
but no, a list so that we aren't
Oh, I will come with
buckshot
ideas,
all over the
but I want
place.
everybody else to come with ideas too. I mean,
She's
let's
trying to
look,
draw on your
had a lot of
expertise.
Yeah, I think
contributions
so.
from Collis and others,
If we have
and Patty, that have already made good suggestions.
a small agenda next month, we'll try to use the rest of the time.
Well, I can't say it'll be small,
I know.
Yes, you
but
can't
we
predict
just-
people.
because they already have a condominium development coming in.
Well, we
Why don't we-
dedicate a meeting and we don't put
Another
anything
one.
on the agenda. The only thing on the agenda is a discussion,
Yeah.
a non-public, whatever they call it.
A workshop.
Workshop.
A workshop. a
Right.
Well, the thing is,
non-public
it's
workshop.
hard if they're going to planning or ZBA and they're required to come here, like I do know two
well, why don't we
potential ones that
just,
might
why
have to
don't
come
we
in.
set up a date for another, that we'll have 2 meetings in say next
November.
month.
Yeah,
But what we'll
Or
do is, if we have a small,
whatever month.
and so
it is.
we have a date for just doing this, but if our first meeting, we find that we have plenty of time, there's only one thing on the agenda, then
Yeah,
we're just going
so
to
far.
That's,
put
yeah,
this on,
that's
and
what,
then this will be,
that's what
Yeah.
so
And-
where we
and
would
we-
start.
Several times this year, we've canceled meetings. And I'm just saying, those are opportunities to take this up without having to have special meetings as well.
Yeah,
but I,
Would-
that's true,
If we
David.
were going to have another meeting, would it be on a Wednesday night? Would it,
I have to check the availability of the room,
okay.
because
got it.
it's budget
We-
season
we
now,
haven't
and they
gotten that far
kinda
yet.
No,
dominate.
we can work on whatever we want to work. We
Yeah.
can choose a date, a day. Because it's a workshop, doesn't have to be public noticed, right?
No,
well, do we have to have it here?
Yeah, you should.
Okay.
well, if you wanna broadcast it, otherwise, I mean, you don't have to have it here, but
Well, I mean, just a planning meeting? I mean, we're just
it's
talking
just,
about.
she does
Okay.
she does the minutes online
Okay.
is how she
Okay.
like, she watches it and does minutes.
I hear everyone makes great brownies, water.
But I can check the dates, because I know in November, you don't obviously
I was gonna say-
meet the night before
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Right, right.
We always meet earlier, and a lot of times, we don't have a lot on that, and we could just maybe, the month of November, make that meeting then.
Make that meeting
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
what I was just saying.
And if anything comes in else, they'll have to wait to,
the next
and
one.
we usually do an earlier meeting too
Early in December,
And
right.
we can make that more
Make
of
that
an
one,
applicant.
Okay.
That'd be
Okay.
Thanksgiving Eve, so be careful with that one.
No, well, we
cancel
don't.
We
that
never
one.
meet that, and we never meet just before
And the
Christmas
Christmas
that
one, too.
week. We
Two of
always
them.
change it
Just
to earlier.
an observation.
But I think taking the, I'm sorry, David, but taking the responsibility off of Jean to run the meeting, that you run,
Oh.
well, you know, if we
I know what
have
you're
something
saying.
on the agenda that's a conservation thing, but if that,
It's-
that you take over that meeting, and I understand you want everybody to come up with ideas, but that you would still be,
Well, I'm gonna have a lot to say,
He'd
and
run
it's hard
it
to
as-
shut me up, that's not a
Okay.
problem.
Wouldn't you you run it like an open space meeting.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, it'll be
Yeah.
informal,
Which
we
we
can
haven't
have, we
had
can
for
have flip
years.
charts and a scribe to take notes and put them on the script. I'm sorry.
Sure, yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
It's the
We
only
have
way to get it
the
moving.
board.
All right, so I think I've accomplished my goal here of getting it
you
on
have done a
everybody's.
great job, Dave, yeah.
So that when we have the opportunity coming up this fall, that we seize the opportunity and
And-
finally start doing something.
Yeah.
Would you want to
So
make
the-
a date for October?
Well, the
I mean-
next meeting in November would be November 15th if we were the week before.
Right, that's,
All right, I gotta look at my
So-
calendar.
But in October, we would be the 25th is our regular,
Yeah, now you already have someone on for that.
yeah.
she's
So,
thinking it's one person right now.
But if we have November 15th,
I can,
we could
Yeah.
That's
Tell-
what, that's what we're
make
saying.
that your
We could make that one the workshop.
make it the
and
workshop.
in-house items.
Right,
Yeah.
and then you're
Some-
saying then anybody could, because we're gonna have a early meeting in December, and if you have.
Yeah,
Right.
then in December, you
Okay.
usually would not, let's see,
It would be the
So
20th
that's-
maybe?
yeah.
But also, the idea that if we have a small agenda for our October meeting, that we're then gonna,
Well,
We
if,
could at least get started.
if
Yeah.
we only had one thing, we could at least do something to get started.
We
yeah,
Yeah.
Right, we could start with just a
One-
discussion of what the list is, what's the inventory.
Right,
That's
one
step
item,
one.
and then be able to have that ready for the November.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I do think public service is another one that might be coming in. Because I've been giving out, if you got,
Those poor
they say,
people.
when do you meet on, you know, the dates for going to either planning or to ZBA. And I said, if you want to do a
Okay.
presentation, these are your dates you would go to conservation.
Okay.
So I
Wow.
believe if you're gonna see on, public service again, you definitely have a condo that was once approved that never got built coming back in. And there is another gentleman for ZBA that I know he might be coming.
Let's
Those would
not
all
stand
be-
this on the head. We want a meeting date. We demand a meeting date. We tell town hall, don't schedule anything on this date.
Let's plan the one in November.
But even
Yeah,
if
the
there's a,
15th.
even
The
if there's
15th
a
of
meeting
November.
date
November
conflict,
15th.
there's the Grassmere Town Hall, which we've had meetings
Yeah.
at before, which
Okay,
is a
we have
wonderful
a date,
space.
November 15th.
Yeah.
So, the availability of the
And
room
we've
doesn't
done
have to be an
Yeah, I'm
issue.
not worried about a venue, yeah.
I think we can get this room on November 15th, only because we've done it before.
I was gonna say we do that any day.
No, well, normally we would be.
We would normally, it would be the
on
Thursday before
22nd.
Thanksgiving.
But we're gonna go on the 15th.
But that's our that's our
Okay.
conservation.
That would be our regular November meeting.
And we never meet then.
Okay, sounds like we've got a plan, and so are we ready to make a motion to
Oh,
adjourn?
No, I'm not.
Oh,
I'm
David,
just
I'm
getting
sorry,
warmed
I tried to put you not public, but
up. So,
I'm sorry,
previously in a
Me.
meeting, we
Oh.
discussed the whole thing about having the sign to the biggest hemlock in
Okay.
Hillsborough
Oh.
County.
ah,
How many have gone to see the tree?
No.
Five.
I sent my neighbor. He said.
I'm
since
gonna
the
walk
sign was
around, I'm gonna walk around with this photo on my phone. Look at that trail.
You should have called me.
Oh, it's
That's our
beat to
trail.
death.
It's 20 feet wide, and then that is the record tree.
Right.
You see it?
So I did hear back from UNH
Yeah,
that they, were gonna do a bunch of them at the same time if we want it. And it was what, was
Oh,
$20?
we got a bigger problem on the sign.
Oh, we have erosion on our trail.
Oh,
The trail is.
Well, that
Looks like there's a hole in the bottom or
It's
something.
20 feet wide. All the roots from this tree are being exposed. Apparently, as a community, we are doing our absolute best to try to kill this record-sized tree.
Because the trail goes with,
That seems to be what we...
Where is
Well-
the trail? Was it on the mountain?
Mountain-based pond.
And then you continue
And there's
That trail.
numerous
Right up
photos
there.
that
Right
some
up
of them
there.
I was gonna
captured,
say,
but the
look,
whole
black
thing
ones.
is like that.
So that's
but
the trail
David,
off
is
Mountain
there,
Lake.
is there
Soil and things
land to
and
just
enter
divert the whole trail?
A
Oh,
little bit of
wow.
signage.
It's 20 feet wide. It's as wide as this room, that trail.
Huh.
Yeah,
This is off Mountain Base Road?
Oh.
No, this is on Summit Trail on
Yeah.
South Mountain.
Right,
Is
south
that
of,
the tree?
That's the tree.
because you said it,
And the
Wasn't
second,
it-
there's
wait,
another
you-
tree that's
you said it
almost
wasn't that
as
far
big.
up, right? Because
And
we
it's
kept
the same
talking,
condition. It's in the
Going up,
middle of
walking
this
that.
trail. The trail it's being used heavily by mountain bikes,
Oh.
ATVs, dirt bikes, and there were even tracks from a truck coming down this, coming up, down
Which
from the
mountain is
top.
that?
South
Sorry.
Mountain.
South
South.
Mountain.
one
At the
behind
top.
the mountain, past Mountain-based pond.
It's
Going
not
up-
that far,
going
she
up
said.
that way.
Oh,
This is-
yeah, okay.
And this is on town conservation land, it's on a lot, the Walker Trail comes in not too far towards the top. When you get up to the top where the trucks are coming in, there's a couple of wrecked cottages that are on our property that we really should also be cleaning up and removing and getting rid of, because they're hazards and eyesores covered with graffiti. We should be blocking that access so trucks can't be driving down this. And looking at the trail map, if we really actually care about this tree, and there's some other large trees around it, if we really care, our issue is not to put up a sign, our issue should be to completely block this trail.
Right.
Take it out of commission. And if you look at the trail map, that wouldn't be a problem. There's other trails parallel going around it. This section of Summit Trail that these trees are on, it should be eliminated as a trail. Because this is gonna kill it.
Yellow hazard.
Gonna kill it, yeah.
Yellow.
That seems to me more important than putting up a sign, so.
Well, I think we could pretty easily request some large boulders. The town seems
Well,
to
I don't
have
think they go
extra
there.
boulders at the top.
Oh, to block the road?
And signage explaining that we have to close this trail because you know,
Of the
the erosion
erosion.
is severe.
Yeah.
So
There's-
it's
there's
the
other-
summit off of Mountain Base?
And then at the bottom, you could.
It's not off Mountain Base, it's on the other side of South Mountain.
Of
It's
South
the
Mountain.
link trail that comes up when you're at the kiosk area
Right.
on Mountain Road.
Okay.
And you start up that way, going up the link trail, eventually you get to the junction of the Summit Trail. And as you start going up the Summit Trail, that's when you run into this big tree area. But that whole link trail coming up, I mean, there's places where it's a gully like 8 feet deep. It's eroded so bad.
Uh-huh.
That's on the water precinct land. They,
Past the,
nothing we can do.
past the fire break, past the power lines?
Before you even get to the power lines. But this section of the trail where these trees are is on our property that we are responsible for, that we can have something to say about it, because we can't do much about what's on the water precinct land.
But vehicles, there shouldn't be vehicles on those trails.
Well, and it's.
Trucks.
It's,
To come off
Well, I-
that fire break.
the damage has already been done,
And that's
unless
it
it's
there.
closed, there's no
Yeah.
way it's gonna
I've seen it
recover.
before.
Right.
The damage
There's no way
has
it's
been
gonna
done.
heal.
Well,
And Austin, you had mentioned before about, you were concerned that, well, you know, if you you're worried about, you know, attracting people to these sites because they might paint graffiti or something on it. Already been done
Yeah.
on this tree and the one that was, you know, the next largest one. Both of them had graffiti on it, and both of them had the graffiti painted over by
you know
somebody
what the problem
who
is,
was
David?
bothered by it. so-
Years and years ago, we talked about trying to monitor that they not have ATVs, not have that kind of motorized stuff. Because I know where the fire break is, it's really kind of a swale area, and the trucks get in there and just rip up stuff. And we talked to the Forest Society, and they said it just really
It's commonplace.
to
Pretty commonplace.
police that.
And what does the Forest Society have to do with town land?
No,
No, we
I'm
just were
just saying
asking
it's
them
a,
how they did it.
how they did it.
Oh,
How
well,
could
they
we
also
do
have
it?
sites where they have controlled it. I mean, that was when Ploss Pines was being considered as an acquisition for PLC. But one of the biggest objections that was made before they took it was, well, we don't want to take it because there's a lot of ATVs out there and so on. And asked the question, has anybody ever put up a sign?
And they got a lot more money than we do.
And they put up signs, and you know what happened? It stopped. That's all it
So what do you,
took.
because it
But
would help to
nothing had
like
ever
get
been
sometimes
done.
this stuff ahead of time of the meeting, because then I can go to Derek and ask questions too.
Yeah,
So are you proposing, like we asked, to get boulders put up there?
And
or-
those,
I'm
and
just,
those
well, I'm
houses
just
are gonna
bringing
need
the
to be
topic up
burned
for
by the-
discussion, and, you
Yeah.
know, we can decide as a commission
keep
whether or not we
vehicles
wanna
out.
do that, but I'm just bringing it to everybody's attention, because I don't think anybody else went up and looked at it.
Tumble down houses, in the past, we've asked the fire department
to burn them.
to burn them in the winter, and they have. This is going back a few
Many
hundred
years.
thousand years, but yes.
Even when they're in the middle of the woods.
They can't burn
Because
those.
it's wooded very closely
No, they
all
can't
around
print,
it.
they can't print those.
Yeah, I don't think that would work in this
Oh,
situation.
they're in the middle of the woods?
They're-
Yeah.
Yeah, they're right in the woods.
Put it on
Well-
a list for a workshop.
Uh,
We can discuss
Tree.
it in more detail in a future meeting, and I'll, you know, get printouts of the photos so you can see it better.
somebody
There's photos of the
scared
houses and stuff
drive
too.
over it, and it'll make it
Well-
less.
Just raising this is another thing we need to
I was just
discuss.
gonna say, we got a big agenda for the
So am I
next
putting
meeting.
a hold on the sign now?
Sounds like an Eagle Scout.
I wouldn't
That's what I was
order it.
wondering.
You wanna order the sign? Because I need to let them know that.
Sounds like an
Otherwise
Eagle
they're gonna
Scout
go ahead and
project.
make it.
Well, they asked if we wanted one.
Yeah, then I did an email, and I was told by the chairman to go ahead and order it, so I did.
Yes, very good.
So if I'm not ordering it, I have
When
to
did
tell
we-
them.
we did not vote on that.
Year to really clean up.
Yeah, they push
We
it.
It was only
discussed-
$20.
It was $20.
I
I
think
know,
we
but
should
we
have-
discussed it at the last meeting, and the conclusion at that meeting was, let's go look and see where the tree is and look
I
into
mean,
it.
I'll,
Yeah, and then I was told to look into getting the signage through
town
the,
officials
the-
come and present.
Yeah.
actually, you even pointed it out
So
on
to give
the
us
letter
ideas.
we got from
Yeah.
UNH, so I
we can-
That's a
did.
good
And
idea.
it was $20, and
They
I
were
sent
doing
an
a bunch of them at
email,
the same
I- I
and
time.
didn't
the
learn
chairman
about this
said,
problem.
go ahead and order it, it's only $20, I think we can cover it.
And for me as a scout, it was like.
But if we're not gonna do it, then I will
Yeah.
tell them,
Yeah.
don't make the sign.
I think we should have the sign.
I
think
just
we
skip the
should have
sign
the sign.
anyways.
And then
He's
we'll,
doing them all at the same time, because we're
Right.
not the only
Right.
community with a
Because
big
he's
tree.
doing them all at the same time. We
Whatever
could always
other-
post it down here at town hall or something.
Right.
The largest hemlock tree is in
It was like
Gloucester.
$20 or $25.
Yeah.
Well, I think in the future, we should probably stick with what we say we're going to do in the meeting and not just change it on the fly. Because at that meeting, we said, let's look into the matter before we make the
And I
decision.
did an email.
No, look into the situation
Oh.
on the ground.
I thought it was
Let's
into the
go see the
sign.
tree, let's go see how, whether it's close to the trail, whether there would be erosion problems.
Okay.
That's what we said we were gonna do.
Well, there was nothing talking about erosion problems. It was
No.
talking about looking into the sign and the
Sign.
cost of a sign,
Yeah.
and that's what we
No,
did.
that's not true. We discussed in this meeting, and I said, we need to go look at the site and see what the conditions are.
That's not my
That's
recall.
what we said in the
That's
meeting.
not how
That's
I
not my
remember
recall.
it.
Now, we have an agenda for the next workshop
sign.
meeting.
Okay,
Go ahead and get the sign and not worry about what we do
And
with
we've
it.
already got
They were doing
some
them
good
all at
ideas
once.
Sure.
to go.
He hasn't done them yet, but when I talked to him, he said they were doing it like how
We don't have
everyone
to-
wanted
We
one.
don't have to post it.
Okay, now we still need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Wait a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?